You know, like that's where I'm at with it. At least I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. And so until I know, I'm going to err on the safe side and just take a step back and protect my kids, not show their faces, not tell every little happening of their lives to people I don't even know.
Is the family complete, or do you think about expanding further?
I told him when I was pregnant last time, I was like, I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll see.
it's always complete. It just becomes complete again.
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Monday, April 15th, 2024. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. It's been a minute since we've talked about the Duggar family. We have been so busy with the sister wives and the world of polygamy, and now we're going to get back to the issues going on in the Duggar family. Jill Dillard and her husband Derick came back to social media. I guess they haven't really gone away, but they made a really sad update and shared some news on their Instagram about a baby. And then Josh Duggar got a visit from his parents, maybe one of the first since he's been incarcerated. That news was actually shared by the son, and interestingly, their visit coincides with last week's family conference, which was held in Big Sandy, Texas. So it's more than likely that Jim and Shelly were down there anyway and decided to make the trip to see him. It wasn't that they made a special trip to see him. Ooh, the shade. Josh Duggar can't even get a special trip from his parents for them to see him. I've taken quite a bit of a break from the Duggar content only because I do not like to promote the propaganda that Jim Bob Duggar puts out. I don't like to speak to or even acknowledge the propaganda that he is having his children put out on social media, which enables and helps him fuel his narcissism and his ego and build his cult. So I don't necessarily report a lot about what's happening with the kids, especially those that remain underneath his control. And I do this because I don't feel like it's helpful to those kids to give them the attention that they want, because it's not for them that they're doing this, they're doing it for their dad. And we've learned through Jill's book, and if you haven't read her book, you need to read her book, about how her dad and her mom kept them all under control and how they continue to keep them under control through non-disclosure agreements and lifetime contracts, which basically means that Jim Bob owns his kids. One of the few that is not underneath his control is a daughter, his second daughter, named Jill Dillard. Jill Dillard is the mother of 3 children, 3 boys, and recently she found out that she was pregnant and was going to have a baby girl. This baby girl tragically passed away in utero, and she ended up having a stillbirth around the 4-month mark of her pregnancy. The news was announced by her and Derick in a post on Instagram, and she wrote, "It is with heavy heart that we announce the stillbirth of our beautiful baby girl, Isla Marie Dillard. Jill was 4 months pregnant, due in August, when we found out that our baby died in utero. From the moment we found out we were pregnant, we couldn't wait to meet our baby. Isla was much loved from the start, and her 3 big brothers were so excited to introduce her to their world. We appreciate your prayers as we continue to grieve and heal from the loss of our little Isla Marie." The photographs were shared by her of them looking at a baby that is wrapped in a pink knitted blanket and covered in pink, and you can't really see the baby. It would have been pretty small at that point, but tragic news. Her comments were filled with lots of condolences and messages of sorrow and people giving her respects for the loss of her daughter. I'm sure that with 3 boys, she probably would have loved to have a little girl. And she and Derick had been asked previously while she was promoting her book, Counting the Costs, whether or not they planned to have any more kids. And she said that she wasn't sure. And she kind of used the same language as a lot of the siblings do, is that they don't know, like, we're not sure. You know, Jessa will frequently say, I said the last pregnancy was my last. She kind of felt that way with her third. But with this baby, they clearly were very excited, and it's just a very tragic loss. And she and Derick will be in our thoughts as they navigate this difficult time. Birth is a huge component of the culture that she grew up in, and she actually spoke about that in her book, about how her dad was very strange about her reproductive life, almost to the extent of trying to control when she could say things and when she couldn't say things about pregnancies, when she could release information, if she could even tell people whether or not she wanted to have more kids, if she could talk about whether or not she wanted to use birth control. And so her being able to use her own voice, making her own announcement on her own time, is kind of, to me, a testimony of how much she has grown and taking her own reproductive choices in her own life to the next stage. She has been primarily private when it comes to the kids on her social media. She no longer shows the faces of her boys, and you don't see them as much anymore. You don't see any more videos on her YouTube channel. And even though this post links and says to check the website says nothing else. There's no other information provided. It's the same post that was written and shared by Derick with one additional picture. So tragic news all around for Jill, and I hope she does recover. I'm sure this is a devastating loss for the both of them. On to the next story, which happens to be that according to the U.S. Sun, Mr. Josh Duggar received visitors. Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar reunited with their son Josh for a rare visit at Texas prison as the family talked all day. Hard-hitting news. Josh had a lonely stint in November with no visitors. So Teresa Roca, who is actually the beat of the Duggars, has been covering the Duggars for years, and they have obtained access to people that have loved ones in the prison and frequently will report the details about what's happening in the system at Seagoville, which includes that there are sometimes lockdowns, there are shakedowns if they feel like they have found content or contraband, and if people are going to get in trouble, they'll disclose gripes and complaints that the prisoners have when it's like in the summer, for instance. Some of the units in Seagoville, which is located near Dallas, Texas, have no air conditioning, which is pretty awful if you consider how hot Dallas is. Even though someone is a prisoner, they are still a human and should be treated accordingly. And yes, air conditioning is not a constitutional right. In 100+ degree heat, it can be very dangerous for people. This story is not about the heat, though. It's about a visit between Jim Bob and Michelle. So apparently Jim Bob and Michelle reunited with Josh in their prison, and they say that they were there for at least 5 hours. Josh likes to sit in the corners, so we were too far away to hear anything. But there were lots of smiles, and they were still in there when I left. The insider gushed. I don't know if I would gush about seeing Josh Duggar. Would you gush? I don't think I would. They were dressed in normal clothes, like church clothes. They also said that for whatever reason, they were bringing up the dress code that Jim Bob has the women wear. So Michelle was in a skirt and a blouse, and she looked skinnier than I remembered. And then they got some snacks, no games, even though the cabinet was open. And he also leaned back with his arms across the chair, his wife kind of tucked into his side. So they don't know what they talked about. They can only read the body language, apparently. Didn't play games, got some snacks, and Michelle tucked into his arms. Michelle wore a skirt, and she was skinny. She has lost a lot of weight since Josh has been arrested and incarcerated. That is true. More body language. Josh was leaning forward, which is different body language than when he's with Anna and the kids. Apparently, his brother was there, Joseph, not long ago to visit, and so was David Waller. We already know that David Waller goes and visits him a lot. David Waller, in my opinion, might have kissed him on the mouth at one time. I'm just saying, allegedly. And it says Joseph and David were there just to visit Josh. They both stayed all day. They looked relaxed and happy. They just shared a couple of snacks and chatted all day. Anna apparently was not present for the visit. The source often sees Anna's brother-in-law, David, who is married to her sister Priscilla, helping her with the 7 children she shares with Josh during visits. So David goes to usher in and help with the kids, which is so weird. David barely pays attention to his own kids. And I don't know if you know, but Priscilla is pregnant with her 7th kid, and that poor woman needs a break. Apparently, Josh does not like to go outside engaging in sports, walking around the tracks, or participating in other recreational activities. And no one in Josh's family actually came to visit him from November 10th to Monday, November 13th. So he had literally one weekend where he got no visitors. That's a story. I frankly would not be surprised that I'm not surprised at all that Josh doesn't actually go and do any hard work or work out, because he wasn't someone that worked out ever. He was like a nerdy tech kid that stayed behind a computer, and now we know what he was doing when he was watching the computer. He was doing disgusting, deplorable acts and actions, looking at disgusting and horrific content. Okay, so they have a new warden in Seagoville. She's been posting notices about contraband, saying that if contraband is found in one cell in one unit, the whole unit will be shut down and lose privileges. His building got shook down this week, and they found a bunch of contraband. So this was actually in February. I know they found a bunch of alcohol. No word on whether there were mass punishments have ensued. And frankly, we wouldn't know anyway, because we wouldn't know if Josh was locked down unless we hear it from someone, like a source would reach out. And I don't get a lot of contact from people that are in Seagoville anymore. I don't really go out of my way to speak to people that have a loved one in there anymore. It just doesn't seem to ever. What do you get from these stories? That his mom and dad leaned into the table and Michelle looked skinny wearing a skirt. He was also at one point, if you recall, in lockdown. So that's the story about Josh. Apparently Anna is not visiting him as much. Does that surprise you? Anna was seen at the most recent family conferences, which was held in Big Sandy, which is part of the Institute in Basic Life Principles. Jim, Bob, and Michelle were in Texas last week because they were down for the family conferences, which was again held in Big Sandy for the Institute in Basic Life Principles. The Duggars are still very much involved in the IBLP. Gil Bates apparently spoke at this event. The Bates family are still very much involved in the IBLP. There is no separation from the IBLP and the Duggars. And there's always stories that the Duggars are somehow separating, or that they are not as involved because they're not speaking at these events, and that's simply not true. Jim Bob is of the belief that if his face will provide too much controversy at an event, he wouldn't speak and doesn't want to speak. And frankly, I don't think he's going to speak until all of Josh's appeals are done. And even though the appeals are done, he is trying to get the Supreme Court to overrule his ridiculous. The Supreme Court doesn't have better things to do right now and deal with real issues than with Josh Duggar screaming that his constitutional rights have been violated. It's ironic that the Duggars will go visit Josh and not Jill. If your child is a P and a SO, you will visit them, you will have a good time, you will be all good and dandy. If your daughter wears jeans, asks questions about contracts, and wants to be paid for her time on the show, that will get you shunned. That will get you shunned. Or if she tells you no, that she doesn't want to come home for a shoot, that will get you cut off from your family members. Or if she tells you that she doesn't appreciate you having an opinion on her reproductive life, that will get you completely called dangerous. You are not dangerous, however, if you harm children in this cult and if you are Josh Duggar. Josh Duggar, because he continues to kiss his dad's loyal behind and remains loyal to his father, he continues to be daddy's favorite, even though Josh and his dad and mom don't go visit him very often. Don't get it twisted, because Josh Duggar does not have the money to have an attorney right now pay for appeals, pay for these ridiculous documents to be sent to the Supreme Court. He doesn't have that kind of cash. He has been incarcerated since 2021. Since December of 2021, Josh has been behind bars, meaning he has no money, meaning that he still has not paid off the $50,000 that he owes to the federal government for his judgment. He owes the feds $50 grand. The feds have a lien against Jim Bob Duggar's home still to this day. And Jim Bob is spending a lot of his time liquidating all of his assets, which makes me feel like a lot of this is very expensive for him. That's just my 2 cents. So Jill is dealing with a very big loss, and Josh Duggar is still behind bars and will not be returning home until 2032. All right. Thanks everyone so much for watching. Make sure if you like this video, give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click on that bell so you never miss a video. Bye guys.